Welcome to the WACO Experience, an American story,
We the people.
with your host, D. Scott Smith.
In order to form a more perfect union.
Interviews with leaders in business, government, and nonprofit organizations.
Promote the general welfare.
Jobs, products and services, and infrastructure for strong communities.
Secure the blessings of liberty.
The WACO Experience is an American story, a story of communities across America. It is your story.
90% of the children that are in WACO ISD are from families that are at or below the poverty line. And so there's a need to keep those kids fed. And my attitude is that if I can give them some food so that they can get fresh, healthy snack food between classes, maybe we can keep them awake in class so they can get an education and get out of poverty.
Earlier this year, I attended the Prosper Waco Summit. We were provided with a lot of data, a lot of information about the greater Waco area in the Waco Snapshot Report. What we saw was that economic development, the numbers are all looking good. And when we look at that breakdown at different population levels, at different neighborhoods, this prosperity isn't applied equally. There are a number of organizations that are addressing these issues, and I'm excited to share what Shepherd's Heart is doing. So stay tuned to this episode of the WACO Experience, an American story. I am grateful for all of those who support and encourage us here at the WACO Experience, an American story. I needed a supplement to my digital calendar, something to guide me in planning and tracking my goals. The Independent Planner is a notebook-style planner and journal designed for entrepreneurs by an entrepreneur. This 4-month undated system is available on Amazon. Take a look and learn more at independent-planner.com. Friends for Life, for over 35 years, providing support systems and services for seniors and people with disabilities. Learn more at friendsforlife.org. The Aspects of Aging weekly talk show with Christine A. Smith. Unscripted conversations with experts. Christine's guests share about products, services, and information about aging, the care economy, and longevity leadership. Watch each Monday live at noon Central or anytime at agingbetternetwork.com. Biddy & Bowes Coffee. Drop in for a hot or cold beverage. Biddy & Bowes provides jobs for people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. Visit them at 110 Franklin Avenue in Waco. The best way to learn guitar is with the Chord Buddy Learning System. This 100% U.S.-made product and Shark Tank winner will have you playing songs in minutes. Shop today at chordbuddy.com. Well, we are back on location at the Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce. I'm here with Bob Gager. He is the Chief Executive Officer for Shepherd's Heart. Shepherd's Heart does a lot of things, but I'll just say, to me, the first thing that comes to mind, and Bob, I'll have you explain a little bit about Shepherd's Heart here, it's about food insecurity. As we know, in doing my research on the organization, 1 in 8 people right here in Texas, in Central Texas, suffer from food insecurity, at least 1 in 8.
Yep.
And so let's have you go ahead and let's talk about Shepherd's Heart. Tell me what's going on there.
If you want to know what's going on today, it's kind of busy because we've just finished the Thanksgiving holiday. Now we're getting ready for Christmas, and I've got a lot of work to do to prepare for that. We've been collecting toys for the past couple of weeks, and we got to get all that sorted out and set up so we can help about 3,880 children, something in the area of 1,800 families that have come to us for help, and they're still coming. Even though we closed the registration period, they're still coming. Oh, please, and I get that all the time.
So you got toys for the children. Give me a definition of food insecurity.
Food insecurity, based on where you hear that word from, it really pertains to not having enough food to live a healthy lifestyle. Really, It can be said a lot of different ways. Meaning that you may not have enough food to last all the time that you need for food, or I like to say healthy food, because if you're eating healthy food, sometimes you don't have to eat every day. And so it can be interpreted a lot of different ways. And I'm not trying to say that people shouldn't eat every day. It's just you've got to eat healthy food.
shepherdsheartpantry.org. And
yes.
That's where they can learn more about it.
Yes.
So tell us about the programs that you're involved in. We've heard some of the toys, a little bit about the meals that have happened. Give us a large view. Let's step back and take a look at the overview of Shepherd's Heart.
I'm going to give you a little bit of evolution, too. When we first started, we had a pantry that was in a shopping center, and they had it set up like a little grocery store so that people could come in and shop with dignity. And that worked out well for the time. When COVID came along, everybody shut down. We never did shut down. I moved my stuff outside, and I had drive-through, feeding people in a drive-through process. After a while, the neighborhood didn't like us anymore. The shopping center didn't like us anymore, because we were running 600 cars through there every day. It was their neighborhood, their shopping center, not anymore, because we were serving people that needed help. We had done some things in the time that we were in years previous to that, or we had done mobile distributions. I started thinking about what we were doing, because we were getting pushback from people about we're taking up too much space, and okay. So I said, well, we need to get another building. We can't do it from here. What I started to think about, because several years ago, the Baylor School of Social Work did a study in the community and found out that there were 50,000 people living in food desert areas. And what that means is there's not a healthy food store where you can get fresh fruits and vegetables and things like that within walking distance. And after I got that study, I started studying the people coming to our pantry. This is several years ago, and found out that 66% of those people were diabetic. And I understood clearly what that study was correlating with, because these people were buying food from their local convenience store. Nothing fresh there, just a bunch of junk food. And it's all processed food that's not healthy for you. So we had the idea, let's go mobile. And I tested it while we were there, so I could cut down some of the traffic coming into the neighborhood. We saw some success with it. We decided to go completely mobile. Now we do 18 to 20 mobile distributions a month. In addition to the mobile distributions, and I'll come back to that, we deliver groceries to 1,400 people. Most of them are older than 65. They have disabilities or something. They can't get to us, okay? And nobody can get to them unless we deliver it to them. So we've got 1,400 people that we deliver groceries to twice a month. We have pantries in 5 local schools. 90% of the children that are in WACO ISD are from families that are at or below the poverty line. And so there's a need to keep those kids fed. And my attitude is that if I can give them some food so that they can get fresh, healthy snack food between classes, maybe we can keep them awake in class so they can get an education and get out of poverty, break that cycle. We also have a couple of pantries at WACO Family Medical Center. They have clinics all around the area. We've got pantries in 2 of those clinics right now. And they don't treat the people at the clinic don't determine who gets the food. The doctors do. And what the doctors have been doing for the last couple of years is studying the impact of giving these people fresh, healthy food instead of what they might otherwise have been eating. And they're able to give them the food and less medicine to deal with their diabetes and bring it under control. And if they're liking the data that they've gotten, they're ready to open up 3 more clinics. We also have a pantry in the McLennan County Indigent Care Center. It's on 8th and Washington Street. People that are homeless, just walking around, need food, they go there. We have a pantry there where they can get food. Now, all of that isn't as healthy as I'd like it to be, but it has to be food that is ready for them to eat. We're feeding people in a lot of different ways. We've focused on what we're doing with the fresh food. I do a lot in that area. And there's a lot of people in the area that are also working in the feeding the homeless. And I decided I'm going to stay in my lane. This is what needs to be focused on. I let these other guys have things that can help them. I give them food because we get a lot of food from all over the community. I give them what helps them, and I stay in my lane so I can focus on this.
You know, it just fascinates me, this partnership with the medical clinics, and that they're actually not just a distribution point, but they're looking at this I'll say from a scientific point of view.
Yeah. I knew some of that stuff before we ever got in connection with them, because what I did is, with our pantry that I said I had set up like a little grocery store, once I realized what was going on, I quit buying processed food. I just wouldn't have it on my shelf. I had canned food, but I tried to keep everything healthy food. I moved a whole lot to produce and fresh food. What I ran into, there was some pushback on that, was people didn't know how to cook it. Well, what we did is we had a small kitchen, big enough for cooking classes, and we started teaching cooking classes. On our distribution days, we had cooking classes, and we had recipes printed so that people could learn how to cook the food that we had. And so it became an evolution. They learned and we learned.
I guess go back to Jesus. And one of the things that he did was he satisfied people's physical needs first, because it's hard to hear other messages when you're hungry.
You're absolutely right on that. And I tell people that sort of thing all the time. When we had our cooking classes, people got a chance to taste that food, and it smelled so good. I mean, the whole pantry and the whole office smelled like whatever they were cooking, and it brought everybody in. But when they started realizing, hey, this is good, it brought their attention toward doing something even more. Once we got their attention with that, in line with what you just said, we were able to create some empowerment classes so we could start teaching people and get them from the bottom and start bringing them up step by step.
This is beautiful. So you give people the food, but also the understanding on how to prepare it. Because if they were just looking at processed food in the microwave, on the plate, in the stomach, not as maybe detrimental to people's health. I mean, it fills up an instant need, but it doesn't help them on the nutritional level, and especially for those students when it comes to paying attention and learning in class, and as you say, breaking the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So you're giving them healthy foods and a life skill.
And they need it. I mean, when you were talking numbers about the poverty rate in this area, I get reports, and it's always in percentages. When I look at that, I said, how many people is that? Because I want to see how many people. Oh, the unemployment rate's only 3 or 4%. Well, that's 7,000 or 8,000 people. I want to know what those numbers represent. When I look at that, just to share some numbers with you, so somewhere between 24 and 27,000 people that are at or below the poverty line. A family of 6, man and wife, 4 children, they're at the poverty line, 40,000. It's 41,000 officially, but a few years ago, United Way did a study on all these kind of things, social things, one of which was a study on food and people. What they found was, and they've got this for every state, that it's done state by state. In Texas, in the state, it's 19% poverty rate. And then above that, there's another level, 29% of the population that are what they call ALICE people. ALICE stands for asset limited, income constrained, and employed. That's your middle class. This is the middle class we're talking about. And so when you put those two numbers together for this particular area, you've got about 27,000 that are at or below the poverty line, and above that there's another 46 or 47,000 that are one problem away, one medical emergency, one car crash or something like that from being right back into the poverty line, okay? And so we see a lot of people. As
I think about this, the statistics, I go back to Prosper Waco, and they had their event earlier this year, and I got the snapshot. I grabbed the snapshot, and it has all the statistics that go through there. And if you look at our area, Central Texas and Waco specifically, in the aggregate, things are looking good. Numbers are up, employment's up, incomes and so forth. But when you break it down into neighborhoods, into population groups, this prosperity isn't equally distributed. And this is what you're saying as well.
Exactly. And there's problems with it too, because I'm going to take it to the single moms. That's a group that my heart goes out to a lot, because they just don't have all the resources to get done what they need to do. If they've got a child that they have to have in daycare, and that child gets sick, now they've got to leave work, come pick up the child, and then if they have somebody that's a relative or somebody that can watch the child for the rest of the day so they can go back to work, it's helpful for them. But a lot of times their income gets reduced because they're missing wages. I'm saying that in the context of areas throughout the city. Rents are up, the price of property is up and everything like that. And these single women can hardly afford rent anywhere. When you start breaking it down into groups, you get into individual situations that are out of control.
This is the way statistics work. It was the little boy who was trying to understand statistics when the unemployment rate nationally is 4%. It's 25% in his neighborhood and 100% at home. So it really does become binary, whether you have a job or you don't, whether you have food or you don't. We're speaking with Robert Gager of Shepherd's Heart. We'll take a quick break and be right back. Today's guest on the WACO Experience, an American Story, we do have Bob Gager. He is the CEO for Shepherd's Heart, and to remind everybody, that's shepherdsheartpantry.org. You can go to learn more there. Bob, let's talk about your journey and your history, because you're not looking at these issues from an academic point of view. This is something that you grew up with.
It's personal with me. And quite frankly, when I first started this, I didn't think about my past. It's one of those situations where I knew God wanted me to do this. The pantry started as a small pantry in the church I attended. They were going to move to another building and there wasn't going to be room for the pantry, so they shut it down. And what started happening is people were coming to my house every Friday and saying, Bob, what are we going to do about this? I'm thinking to myself, why are they coming here and asking these questions? God was showing me some opportunities. And what I suggested to him is that what I think we could do that would be more beneficial, because I'd already done a study on some pantries. Every church pantry just could only handle so many people because they only had so many dollars and so many volunteers that they could get and so much space. They just didn't have the resources to do anything on a grand scale. And this is what God was telling me. Become a centerpiece, okay? Let's get all the other churches to support what you're doing. If they provide some funding into you, then we can do everything that we need to cover a bigger area. That's what got us started. Once I got that ball rolling, it's one of those things where I'm in the pantry on a Thursday. We're doing a distribution, and I'm watching people and just helping wherever I could. And God spoke to me and said, that's why you're here. Because of what they're going through, because I came from that. I grew up in that environment, and I understood it. I understood it well enough to make sure that I drove myself hard as a young man to get an education, and I'm the first one in my family to get a high school education, college education, be successful in business. Actually, I'm the only one in my family who did that. But God just reminded me, said, that's why you're here. And so I started getting a bigger picture of that. I went to the food bank and said, we don't have enough food coming into this community. We need more pantries, and here's my idea. And I gave them a picture of a model. And at that time, they weren't big enough to be able to handle it. They said, we don't have enough people to train them, blah, blah, blah. I thought I would be persistent. For about three and a half months, every Friday afternoon, I was in the president's office, program manager's office, talking to them about this. And then one Friday afternoon, they came to me and said, why don't we try it like this? I said, that's awesome. And I'm thinking to myself, God's in this room. That's exactly what I said the first time. And so what it was is we created 10 more pantries in this area, in churches and different places. And there's still a couple of them that go by Shepherd's Heart. But the rest of them have changed their name back to their church. And the 10 that I started had to be called Shepherd's Heart, whatever the name of their church, because I was the fall guy. If something went wrong, they came to me, not because they didn't have enough staff to train all these people, so I became their mentor. And so I got a chance to get my hands into a lot of different things in the area. But I understood what was going on. This church can only serve 25 people because that's all they have the resources to do. But we need to package things a little bit different. So yeah, we expanded it to a whole lot more.
So let's talk about staffing, because when we met, it was the Wienermobile was in town.
That was great.
And we were out in front of the retail store, Things from the Heart. And you told me something surprising about Things from the Heart and the staffing for Shepherd's Heart.
When we first started Things from the Heart, it was a little store right across the street from where our pantry was located at that time. And when we first started, this thing started out of my bank account. I'm a yes man. God says start it, and so I did. And then I think, I got to do some fundraising. I got to figure out how to do this. People were dropping things off at our front door at the pantry, clothing and household items. And I said, what am I supposed to do with this stuff? Then God gave me an idea. Have a garage sale. So I told my people, I said, let's put this stuff in the back room for a couple weeks. We'll collect enough. We'll have a garage sale out here in the parking lot. They all went along with it. We had only a couple of weeks that we were collecting this stuff, and the back end was full. So I said, let's go get a garage sale. I went and got a license, a permit or whatever, and we had a garage sale. We raised about $1,300 in just a few hours. I said, wow, this is good. At the end of the day, we're taking this stuff back and putting it back inside what didn't sell. And I'm thinking, we've got about as much going back inside as what we started with. We're going to do this again. We did it again a couple weeks later. Another $1,300. So I went to the guy that owned the shopping center and said, there's a little store across the street here. It's been empty for a long time. I'll give you 20% of my sales if you let me use that for a store. I probably should have said a lot less than that because he said yes really quick. It lit his eyes up. Yeah, come on. Well, we outgrew that store in a year. And so now where we're at, we've got about 10,000 square feet. In the time that we've been growing and growing and growing through the years, we've got actually 21 employees. We've created 21 jobs in this city. That store pays for those employees. People come and donate clothing and household items to us, and what we do is if somebody comes in with a need, we fill that need, and then whatever's left, we sell it. And it's been growing and growing and growing. It's just I'm just using some of the skills that I've got to make some of this happen. Before I did this, I used to take businesses that were screwed up and turn them around. And so I had a little bit of logistical sense. And so that's all this is doing. God's just using the skills that he put in me to do this.
Let's talk about your vision for the future of Shepherd's Heart. Obviously, it started as an outgrowth from a church ministry that went away because of a building change, a relocation for the church. Then it's out of your house, out of your bank account. Now it's being funded by this store. The staff is being funded. The staffing. The rest. So all those jobs are being provided for by the retail store, which is a beautiful thing. Which means that when people donate, their money is going to the work of Shepherd's Heart.
It's going right back into the community.
Right, yeah.
We're building something.
So it's grown a lot. It's changed. What do you envision for the future?
What I'd like to say that I'm envisioning for the future is that we just become more proficient at what we're doing and find better ways of doing all of this so we can find ways. To me, if we continue doing what we're doing, we'll stay there. What I miss right now is empowerment schools. When we had that, we were taking people from standing in our line and then you would go through that. And then at that time, WACO had an entrepreneur school. I had 6 people went through that course and graduated. And a couple of them are still in business. And I'm proud of that. We need to do that on a bigger scale. With the schools, I thought if we could do something with the schools, we could help educate those kids. It's kind of hard to get involved in that situation because the ISDs have their ways of doing things and everything's got to conform. But what I'd really like to see is where, and we have programs in WACO that are helpful to people get jobs and improve their skills. I got to start with the people we're working with don't even have that much skill. We need to bring them all the way up. There's people that don't believe in themselves, and I use the example of a frog in a pot of water. If you put a frog in a pan of water and put it on the stove and you start turning up the heat, the hotter it gets, the frog's not going to try and jump out. He acclimates himself to the environment. And what's happening with these people after generation of being in poverty, they're frogs. They don't like it when I use that example in the classes because they don't want to be called a frog. I'm not using it as a derogatory term, but they're not doing anything for themselves. They don't know how to do anything for themselves. We need to bring them up. And it's going to take some nurturing, just like you would with a little baby on the way up, because they didn't get the right kind of nurturing. And I'm not saying their parents were wrong. They just didn't know. That's what I would see in the future. Be able to do more of that to get the people to be more attentive to, wait a minute, I don't have to do it this way?
So I see this as an extension of, you provided food, you provided healthy food, and then you provided education on how to cook that food, prepare meals with that. And now you're also talking about education around how to believe in yourself, how to up your own skills so that you can also take care of yourself.
And what I like about this is I keep sharing my message through the different churches that we are connected with. And these churches are starting to get the idea, wait a minute, let's have some classes on this. Because many of the churches, I use them as my distribution points. And they're seeing it. It's like, oh, the light went on for them. When the light goes on for them, it's going to be the place that we can grow this stuff.
When we, as we finish up, as we wind down the program here, let's talk about how people can be involved, whether participating as a client of the pantry or the other services, or if they want to be involved. What can they do? They can write checks, but they can also be involved physically.
What I see myself as, I'm going to put this into perspective for you. I don't know where we're going to be at the end of the year. Last year we served 95,474 families. That's not people, that's families. At the end of November, I think we were about 86,000 families. So I don't know how we're going to finish this year. What I see that we've done, and it's really what God's doing through us, is that I'm like the guy with a little stick in front of the orchestra. It's the rest of this community that's getting involved in this. By getting involved, they can get involved by being a volunteer at the store. They can be a volunteer on food distributions, and we have so many different ways of doing it. They can be a driver and deliver groceries to the seniors. The drivers that we have love their jobs simply because the seniors, that's maybe the first and only person they're going to talk to today or this week. So there's a lot of things that are parts of this puzzle, but we've got the community engaged in this in a lot of ways. There's cash donors, there's store people, there's volunteers. We have a pantry where we have volunteers in there every day pre-packing everything that we're going to have out on our distributions and whatever we need to deliver to our seniors. That's all being pre-packed. We collect a lot of food from different stores and restaurants in the area, and the food that we get isn't always perfect. So we've got to go through it and check it and make sure it's right and be able to do the right things with the food. We can sort it out. And so I just see the community getting more and more involved with what we're doing. It just tickles me. I love it.
Wow, I've learned a lot today about Shepherd's Heart and shepherdsheartpantry.org. Thanks for taking the time to share with us today.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for asking me into this.
The WACO Experience, an American Story, is a production of D. Scott Smith Company, all rights reserved. Thank you for listening.